Hello and welcome to the King Heroes Journey podcast. My name is Beth Martins, and today I'm here with Mark Archer. Welcome, Mark. I'm glad to have you here.
I'm glad to be here.
Oh, fantastic. So I'm just going to get Rockfin going when it seems ready. There it is, ready to go. Awesome. Nice. And I'm going to send one more Telegram message that we're live as well. So you're there in Missouri, and I will definitely take a minute to introduce you once we get a few people on here. It's always fun with the live audience because there's more interactions, more lively, more alive. We were just talking about the URL extensions that are like life. And here we go. So just give me 1 minute. It's funny when you go on Telegram and search your own group that you go to like 97 times a day, and it doesn't give me that as a suggestion.
I see.
There you go. All right. And so welcome. I see Susie Gemney's here in the chat. That's great. I'm glad to have you here. Maybe a friend of yours. She's saying much love to you. That's very nice. Good. So if those of you, or for those of you who are not familiar with Mark's work, I first discovered him on the channel of Matt Presti. Shout out to Matt, who is like-minded. I saw you guys, was it sparring on Matt's Telegram last night?
Occasionally he likes to spar. You know, I think he takes the devil's advocate just for the fun of it.
Yeah, it's funny how many times I was going to chime in, especially about the FE stuff, and then I'd like, nope, I'm not. I don't spar without a really good reason to do that myself. But yeah, for those of you that are not familiar with Mark's work yet, I do recommend going and catching that interview. We're going to be talking today about the Bible. It's a subject that I had not exactly turned away from, but after a couple of years of, for me, a deep dive and really trying desperately to make sense of it so I could match it up with some of my inner experiences. I was not successful and decided not to continue for that. But when I heard your work, Mark, and heard you talking about it, it's so unique, your perspective on it. And you know, a lot of people want to be right about that work in the Bible, but you're actually going right to the source and the words and looking for the truth. So I personally never mind being wrong about things. I just want to know what's real and what's true. So I'll just introduce Mark. He says, I'm 63 years old, born into a semi-Christian family. Me too, actually, by the way. My dad was raised Christian and then got kicked out of the church because my mom wouldn't let him pay. They had two young children, and it seemed like a bigger priority that rather than setting so they exed them out of there. He says, my mother was a Christian, father was not. Parents would take us children to a local church every Sunday. At the age of 12, became a Christian himself. He prayed for wisdom and knowledge, and before that had done so poorly in school, but did dramatically better after. After school, he joined the army and had a fascination with the Bible and became really interested in the original language of the Bible, which is, I think, what many people would love to do, but only aspire to do because it's no little study. And then studying it from that original language. He says he would always try to verify the original language and definitions with what the pastors were preaching. In 1993, he went to a local bookstore to look up books about the New Age movement and found one that told him about a cipher code in the Torah of the Bible, which is the first 5 books I was just going to ask, and contains 187 chapters. And there's a separate code for each chapter. And he had only had one code, the first one. In 2001, he went to Tennessee for the Feast of Tabernacles, met a man and felt led to share with him the code. And he told you that the code was put into the Bible by his people, and you began to discuss it, but he never corrected you. You learned a lot about how to translate the Bible from him and had begun to translate the first 5 books. He's published them on Amazon Kindle. Is one of them more than 1,000 pages or 5,000 pages or something, if I heard
They're
correctly?
all more than 1,000 pages.
They're all
more than 1,000. Yeah, because well, I had first done it at a large font, and so, but I but they're all more than 1,000 because I put with each verse, I put all the definitions of all the words that are in the verse, so that you don't have to go and start looking, grabbing out your diction. I had put it's all there together, and
Amazing. Yeah. That's so good. Yeah, and
and,
especially go ahead.
and I also I put a Jewish translation and I grabbed one of the other translations, English translations, from a Christian Bible, and then I give you the definitions, and then I put in uh, my translation, not necessarily mine, but I mean mine. It's not mine personally. It's just taken from the definitions that you see in the dictionary, and you put them in there, and don't take anything, and don't change them, and make sure I get a definition for each prefix and suffix, and now I'm beginning to use. Most Bibles do not give you a definition of the et. That's the aleph and tov. They because that has a definition, and so I started to put that definition in. And so when I'm doing Joshua, I'm putting that definition in there, and it does make sense. The definition of et makes sense. But I'm feeling that there's something more to that et than just the definition, because that et means sign or flag or omen or something like that. And when I was watching another video about the New Testament being nothing more than the stories about the zodiac and the signs in the heavens and the constellations, and so everything, all those stories in the New Testament are just stories relating to the constellations. And I'm not saying that they're not about the people that they think, but they're taking the stories and marrying them to the constellation stories, and they match up with stories of the constellations. And so when I said, well, maybe that's another layer of the Old Testament, and all the et words, all the words that have et in them, or all the words that have et preceding them, are maybe a story that this is a sign, a constellation sign story. But I haven't gone into researching because I don't know really too much about the constellations and how they apply to everything. Because I think right now that would be too much for me. Because sometimes you got to stay within your own story. Let somebody else, because not everybody has the same knowledge. I think the knowledge of the truth is spread around, uh, and you just have to gear them, as they fit into gears. My story's here and this story's here, and they just match in like this.
Nice.
Uh,
Nice image. I love
that way
that.
you can't get too carried away with yourself. I got all the knowledge. Because that's what happened to Lucifer. He thought, because it talks about in the Old Testament how he used the covering for his parents, and so he gained all the knowledge that they had, and so with that knowledge he thought that he could displace them, and of course he can't. And then that's what gives you the whole story of Genesis chapter 1. The whole story of Genesis chapter 1 is what happened, with him getting expelled from the spiritual realm, and then coming to the physical realm to wander, and then he finds uh, a world that he can make his own world in. Because
Right, right. Yeah, and I'd love to talk more about that. I want to just quickly say hello to a few more people in the chat that have come to see you. And hello, Jennifer and RMASB, and Michelle's here. Fantastic. I'm glad. And you guys are excited to learn. So that's really good. I'm glad you guys are here. So yeah, lots of subjects, and I know top of my list is actually the season that we're in right now. We're about to be coming to Easter, and so some of those stories I think are very interesting. I'll just relay when I was a child and would wake up on Easter morning and see our Winnipeg Free Press, and on the cover of it was always somebody dead on a cross. And that was, and then the little time that I went to church, I was always traumatized by Jesus hanging on a cross at the front, and all of the what I at some point concluded was actually trauma-based mind control. So I'm very curious about your take on the Easter story and the death and rebirth. Some people say that in fact it's backwards, that this should have been a win, that like Christmas and Easter are backwards, that the death of Christ would have been more logical in that, before the sun comes back in December, and that this would be more the time of the birth of the Christ energy, if you talk about it like that or not. One of the things also that really interested me in having you on is that you subscribe, as you were already talking about, to the astrotheology, even though that's not your exact subject, but that you do believe that Jesus walked the earth as a man. And so sometimes those paths don't meet. And when you got groups of people that it's sort of an either or, they either believe it's all symbology, all what do they call it? And not analogy. What are the stories that it's just illustrating principles and teachings. But there's very few, I think, that have both perspectives. So definitely want to talk about Lucifer and Satan, because there are so few mentions of that in the Bible, according to just myself and not reading the Hebrew at all. So I'm curious about your take on that. And the first question I would like to ask really is about sacred purpose, because this is the King Hero's journey, and it's all about that path of going through our lives. And Christ's life was a serious hero's journey, where we're tasked not only to get past our own challenges and obstacles, but ultimately bring the elixir back to the people who need, what you've learned on that in that process. So, do you consider this to be sacred purpose for you? Do you feel called to do this? I have to imagine.
Well, yeah, I think, yeah, this is my. It seems because I could talk. Well, I could talk about the Bible, uh, like forever, and then not lose any energy. Um, you
That's
know,
a sign.
without I could probably do it without even eating. And just forget everything and just talk about that. And that sometimes I taxi the Amish and uh, and and we drive for long periods of time. And if I could, some of them are not afraid to talk about the Bible, and but I do, you could say, step on their toes, because they don't necessarily believe the Bible as I do, and because they only read the Bible from the German, and which is a little bit a step back from the English, but it's not as far step back as to the Hebrew.
Could you give us a little bit of a take on the evolution of the translations? So, how did it start? We're familiar. Well, I'm familiar with English translations. You're talking about the German. That's my ancestors were reading the German Bible, and then you had a Latin version. And so, do you want to just give us a quick rundown on how that worked
Well, I
historically?
think, okay, I think that there are the standard Hebrew, which is modern day Hebrew, is the one that is without the vowels, without the vowel points. Is the as far back as it goes, because you have to understand. I didn't always think that. I always thought that Paleo came first and then the modern, and then the modern with vowel points. But since meeting that gentleman from the priestly Illuminati, uh, they with the code, that with the cipher code, that cipher code was put in with the Masoretic text, and so and so I'm beginning to think that side by side are the paleo and the other texts are almost side by side, because I don't know if they would have put it in with the paleo Hebrew, because I know that they just from what I gather, I could be wrong, but from what I gather, they just stick with the modern Hebrew. But it doesn't matter. The paleo, you would just switch out the paleo letters for the modern, and that's how you would go. But I do notice that with the Aleph and Tov, the Aleph looks like an arrow, and the Tov looks like an X. So you're going from the arrow to the X, and so X marks the spot.
There you go. So that goes way back in
Yeah.
history.
So in a manner of speaking, the pictures, because it's a pictorial language. The ancient Hebrew, the is a pictorial language. It's sort of like but not as pictorial as the Egyptian language. The pictographs.
Right. Would you
And
compare it? Would you compare it to Sanskrit at all? Are you familiar with
I'm not
Sanskrit?
familiar with Sanskrit at
Okay.
all.
Okay.
That's they're I guess you could say that there's a pictorial language for each. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Polaran concept, where you have the Hyperboreal age, the Polaran age, the Lumerian age, and the
Only
tree of life.
roughly. Yeah,
Pardon?
only roughly.
Only what?
Roughly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I like that, but I don't know if it's true or not, and but from what I gather, there's no human life, no race for the Polaran age, which they count as the first. But I think that's wrong. So I think there was a sentient life, and that's the Elohim. The Elohim are the life that was made first. Because when you read the very first verse of the Bible, uh, it doesn't necessarily say in the beginning was uh, the Elohim created the heavens and the earth. It doesn't necessarily say that. It can say that, but if you really take the words and what they say, it really says with the head, created the Elohim the heavens and the earth, and if you take it even further and not ignoring the first aleph that's there in the translation, not because most translators take that as chapter 1, and then they forget about it. But when they do the Bible code, the Bible code that everybody should know about is ones that all the books are about, where they just string all the Hebrew letters around, all in a line, and then then you map out words, and and you get people's future and or stories of what happened in the past, and stuff like that. They don't forget the A, the very first letter, the Aleph. So if you add that to the string of letters, you get a different picture, because the first two letters are A, B, and that's the word for father. And then if you take the last letter of the first word and keep it for the second word, because that's how you did the actual code, that the cipher code. Father with L desires perfect twins. You get it marries up with what what you get in Romans chapter 1 verse 20. Romans 1 verse 20 basically tells you that that nature gives you a picture of the nature of the creator. And so when you look at creation, you should be able to see the nature of the creator. It's sort of like Leonardo da Vinci painting his paintings, and you ought to be able to see the nature of Leonardo da Vinci in the painting. That doesn't make the painting the God, but it's a picture of the God, or of the creator. And so nature should tell us about who the creator is.
That's
And one of the first things you see is well, how does nature create something? And nature doesn't divert from this as much as we're trying to pervert nature. And that's male and female. Now,
yeah.
in the spiritual realm, the male and the female are united permanently, because it's a permanent uniting. So you're not going to see one away from the other. But in the physical realm, they separate because we're supposed to get a uniting to make. You understand it? So in the physical realm, we have a picture of what some people think is the creator, but that cannot be the creator. And I think you know what I'm talking about. The Baphomet. The Baphomet is a being that has both male and female with it, and that's not a picture of the creator.
That's not going to make life.
Right,
Exactly.
because that cannot make life. You cannot make
right.
life, if you got male and female, that everybody that's male and female together is sterile.
Exactly. Which is what they're trying to do right now. Right.
Yes. Right.
Yeah. Forgive me. I'm super interested in what you're talking about, but there's a few questions that have come, like, just how did they put the Bible together in the first place? Is that your subject, or did you not go down that road?
I didn't go down that road, but in a manner of speaking, it makes sense that the Bible, they put together the first 5 books of the Bible as the knowledge, the hidden knowledge of how the universe or how creation is made. So the very first code is Father with L, and that L is not. I used to think that. See, when I first met the gentleman from the priestly Illuminati, and this is the Illuminati family that you are not going to see. They remain hidden, because most times you hear about the 13 tribes of Israel. Well, he said that the Illuminati, they take that pattern. That's a pattern for them as it is a pattern for the Israelites. And so you normally see the 13 tribes, but most people forget about the tribe of Levi. And the tribe of Levi is split into 3 families: the family of the Kohathites, the Merarites, and the Gershonites. And only the Kohathites could be high priests. And then the other ones were lower priests. So you can't forget that there are 2 extra tribes that have that are families. So there are really 15 bloodline families, not 13. And so I would say that his family, since they had the keys, the original keys, and he tried to tell me that he stole all the keys. The keys are one book, then the key being, then there's another book that has just the codes, that you pull out with the keys, and then you have the Torah. So it's 3 books, 3 holy books. And he said that he stole them all and had them hidden. But I don't know if I believe that or not. But I do, I do understand. I did find the code, and we talked about it. And so what he was telling me made sense, and so we got Father, and I had first translated it. I put Father with L desires perfect twins, or but I didn't realize that there are 2 B's there. I didn't realize, and he didn't correct me. He runs under the he did things, allowed the student to lead the teacher into where the student wants to go. So in other words, not directing the student to go here. Just you taught the student what only the student could learn. So that's the student gives you the clues of what you're going to teach it. And so he never corrected me, and I didn't find out this until after I started writing the commentary on Genesis. And all of a sudden I realized that second B was supposed to go with the second word, and so it was Father with L desires perfect twins. And then shortly after I put the B with that, I went back to, it seemed that life reminds you of things, and life reminded me that one of my principles in translating the scriptures was looking at nature and not going against what nature was showing me, of who the creator was. And so I was thinking, well, Elohim, I thought L was Elohim. I thought, because that's what you're taught, all throughout your Christianity, that L is Elohim. L is short for Elohim. Well, right. Elohim is masculine. It's a masculine word. Okay. Father is definitely masculine. So Father with Elohim, Father masculine with masculine desires perfect twins. Can anybody tell me what's wrong with that?
Yeah, you're missing a mother.
In other words, Adam and Steve make Cain and Abel. And that's not right. That's so Elohim couldn't have been El could not be short for Elohim. So, but it could be short for Eloha, which is Elohim singular. And then so Eloha, and then that made sense. Father with Eloha desires perfect twins. And now that's a picture of the very first verse. Father with the head, and the head is feminine. Bereshit means with the head, and the head and the yud t at the back means it's feminine, and it's diminutive, so it means one head. So Father with the head, the feminine head, created the Elohim. So that means the Elohim are the children. You just translate that just like you would English, and so created Elohim. And then with the and you use the you translate the etz, so, and they translate as with, with the heavens and with the earth. Or you could say, because the very first thing that was made, well, they were all made at the same time. As soon as the Father and the head met, everything was created. Because there's no time in the spiritual realm, so time doesn't exist.
So sorry.
And then and so you could, so Father, created, Father and the Mother, they created the Elohim. There was their instant children, and in the spiritual realms, because another word in the translation of Hashemayim is lofty, and spiritual is lofty, and then the other was and with what is Haaretz. Now typically they translate that as earth, but another translation of Haaretz is firm, the firm. And so what is firm? Well, this is firm. Anything you can feel with your senses is firm. So that's the physical realm. The physical realm is the firm realm. So I see there could be that could be translated as Elohim with the spiritual realm and the physical realm. And and it makes sense. That would be the first thing that was created. And it's not necessarily first; it's created instantly. So as long as we've had a creator, we have a creation.
Mm.
So that means there is no beginning of the creation, because they were, as long as they've been together, and they've always been together, because they're a perfect marriage. The father and the mother, they create a perfect marriage, and so there's not going to be any separation. You're not going to be able to see the difference. You're not going to be able to see them separated, because that's probably why marriage is in the Bible is frowned upon, because we're supposed to be a picture of the heavenly marriage, and so that's the way that's the goal, you could say, to be like it is in heaven, or in the spiritual realm. And
Right.
so
So
that
that's
gives you a different picture of. So there's no in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. There's
there you
no
go.
beginning. It
Right.
always was.
Wow. So right out of the gate, you're completely challenging probably one of the most foundational paradigms of any Christian's thought. So
Right.
that's exciting for me. I love breaking out of that. And then you also talked about the Elohim, the children, and that can be really confusing because all of a sudden in Genesis, um, there's a plural on the God, right? So
Right.
that is the Elohim, but it's not God. It's how do you describe that?
They're
Them?
the children.
They're the children. And and what's our regular word for that? Or like did you not use the word angels?
Well, they can be, because angels is just nothing but messengers. And so when the Elohim are fulfilling the role of messenger, they would be an angel. But if you consider this, not all of the Elohim are bad. Because this is where you could take parts of the story, because the story is spread out with all 66 or even all 88 books. You take in the extra books that were thrown out, because they count. They give you different pictures. They don't give you the approved picture of what they're trying to tell us, or what they're trying not to tell us. Um,
The extra books, by the way, is that the Nagamati?
the Nag Hammadi and the Apocryphal, because the Nag Hammadi just is the extra books of the New Testament, but you have the Pseudepigrapha, which is the extra books of the Old Testament, and so there are dynamic books in there, that you really need to make yourself familiar with. Uh, and so because they give you the idea, they give you pictures of certain things, especially of Sodom and Gomorrah, and that we don't know, and so because if you read these 17th, 18th, and 19th chapter of Jasher, you get a picture of a different picture of Sodom and Gomorrah and the other three cities, and even Gomorrah's a lie. It's a lie, and I think it's a lie. Just the name of the lie, not the actual city. Yeah, it's a name. They I think they do that to hide who the present day Gomorrah is. See,
Wow.
because there's no G in the name of the city, the actual Hebrew word of the city. There's no G, so it's not Gomorrah. Now, I'm still wrestling with this word, because it's eye opening, and the word is Amora or Amera.
Sounded a little bit like love, amour.
No, think Amera.
Like as America.
You got it. And so I've just now been wondering, is all five cities coming back, and are they spread out throughout the whole land? And so you got in, and so I started looking up the definition of the Amorites, And it's funny how a lot of the words in the definition of Amorite fit all the Americas, from North America. And it's funny how South America, it's so is America Gomorrah or Amora? And if you look at how they're acting, not I'm not talking about everybody.
Mhm.
There's got to be a lot in there. A lot meaning the righteous. But the people running the show, especially Hollywood and the Jews who say they are Jews but are not, because they're the ones running the show, and you can see all the why are we heading towards, the transgenderism is a tell, because that's what came at the, because it talks about in the New Testament, as in the days of Noah, and some of the verses add in, as of the days of Lot, so shall it be at the coming of the Son of Man. And one of the things, one of the things of Sodom and Gomorrah in all 5 cities is the gender issue. And they're all trying to revert to they're all trying to emulate the Elohim of this world.
Interesting. And then you get the English meaning of the word sodomy, obviously came from that reference there.
Yes.
Is that the same thing where the wrong kind of
the wrong kind of sexual desire or activity is covered under there,
right?
And
more in the spirit of the Baphomet.
Right. Yeah. And you go to New York City, and you could see the statue of Baphomet there that they recently put up, and so it's near, when you get closer to the time, it all, the stories of the Bible are stories of them, all of them. All the stories are stories of them, and you have to understand that. So the principles that you're supposed to live by are in the Bible, just as well as the principles you're supposed to beware of are in the Bible. And one of the things that we talked about, the gentleman, he said that that the Creator created in us free will, and it's one of the rules. The rules of creation is that if you're going to make a sentient life, that sentient life has got to have a freedom of choice. It's got to be able to choose. And I just got a different picture of the Garden of Eden. And see, because I was watching, I watch Star Trek a lot. I'm sort of a Star Trek fan. And there's a lot of the stories, a lot of these spiritual stories are told in the realm of Star Trek. So one of the recent ones because I was rewatching The Cage, and then rewatching one of the other episodes, and in The Cage, the first officer is going to blow themselves up, because she said it's wrong to make a race of beings to be slaves. Now, I don't know if you remember, you read the first 2 chapters of Genesis. The second chapter of Genesis Adam, what was he made to be?
A man, or son of no. Yeah, sorry, you go. I don't know.
Okay. He was made to serve the animals. And that Hebrew word is nothing more than slave.
Ah, interesting.
See, because the Adam in the first chapter, that Adam, see, both Adams are different. And then there's certain characteristics that are the same, but for the most part, they're made different. And there's no talk. I mean, there's talk in the first chapter that Adam was made in the image of the Elohim. So not in the image of the father and the mother, in the image of the Elohim. And in one of those things it says, now what is the image? What is the reflection? Because that's one of the definitions of image is reflection. His role that he was given was, you will have dominion over and you will subdue all the animals and all of creation. Okay, now when you look up the Hebrew word dominion, it also means to subjugate. So there's double subjugation and so there's double subduing. And so that's not just having rule over, it's dominating them. That's the role of that Adam. So if that's his fruit, that's his image, which that's also the image of the Elohim. Because made in the image of the Elohim, see, most people don't take that far and just reverse it back. And you have to reverse it back if you're going to understand that in the image of, because image is the reflection of something else. And so that's a reflection of the Elohim, because it actually says that, made in our image. So that Adam is the ruling class, the elites. And inside the word elite is El, short for Elohim. And then you read chapter 2, verse 1, it says, that after he'd finished all the work which he had done, and all from all the hosts. Well, host is a muddy word. It should really have, because host means many people. So when you ask yourself, most people do this as a joke, well, who did Cain marry? Because the only, there's nobody here. Yes, there is. Just reread chapter 2, verse 1, and you'll see that host means many people. There's many people for him to choose from. They're already there.
Right. I know, because the math doesn't work. See,
right,
when you're like, where did all these people come from?
Yeah, you have to retranslate you have to go in back there and translate the Bible for yourself, because it's there. They just you got to do the work, and it's going to change your. I wrote in that thing, Facebook. I could provide the nitro if you can provide the courage. And so so and what also is an image of the Elohim is the gender issue, because what does Yeshua say about the angels in heaven? They neither marry nor given in marriage, because there is no gender there, because there's no reason for gender, because all the Elohim are made at once, so they don't need any more, and they don't die. Why do you think if all the stories in the Old Testament are stories of what happened in heaven, why wasn't Lucifer killed after he murdered whoever he first murdered? Well, he couldn't be killed. He had to be cast out of heaven, and so because angels don't die. There's no male angels and there's no masculine angels and there's no female angels. They're transgenders, and that's why everybody that's following Lucifer is going back into that mentality. When this transgender movement is a movement showing who the master is, who their master is. And so that first Adam he was male and female. Okay, and then when you go to chapter 2, there's no breath of the Elohim in the first Adam. And also you could consider the first Adam as sons of the Elohim, the B'nai Elohim. So this is where you're going to get the chapter 6, the making of these are the Elohim, the Adams and everything. They make the Nephilim. That's where the Nephilim come from. That's the line of the Nephilim. And then you got chapter 2. this Adam. This Adam does not say that he was made in the image of Yahweh. And so this gets you to understand who really Yahweh is in the Bible. Because if this Adam, you read that he's meant to serve and to tend the animals and the trees and the plants. So that's the role of a servant. So that means that if that's his image, that would have been, if it would have said that he's made in the image of Yahweh, that means Yahweh would have been a servant too. You understand? So since there is no that there's not that those words aren't there, so don't put them there. You can't put them there, and most pastors put it there. They put the idea there.
And what's the angle, Mark? What do you think is the angle? Why was it important for them to mangle that?
Oh, well, they want to. Well, what's Lucifer's goal?
To have us all turn away from God.
No, his goal is for us to worship him. Because he goes, what's one of the reasons he was kicked out? Because he wanted to sit on the throne.
Right.
So he's going to want a place where he's sitting on the throne. And he wants all the worship, so he's going to paint the picture so that he's going to get the worship. And so he's painting the picture however he can so that we will worship him, and he'll use every trick of the book. Okay, now one of the things you had when you go to translate the names, but you can still keep the names, but just so you understand that the definition of the name is just as important as the name itself, And so when you translate Yahweh, the Yud means he, and the Hey Vav Hey is nothing more than the word to be. So, and it's the masculine form of the word to be. Now, if it was Hey Yud Hey, it would be the feminine form for the word to be. In other words, the word, because Haya, which in Exodus, is that gives that's I am, and then you got Yahweh or Yahuwah, that's he is. So he is what do they put behind it? He is Elohim. He is Elohim. Can you see it now? If Elohim in the first chapter is Lucifer, because it says that, because in verse 3 of Genesis chapter 1, because after they come to the earth, because in verse 2 says that when you translate, the earth was formless and void. That's the way it's typically but that's a soft translation. But the hard translation is it was ruined and a desert. Now, why was the earth ruined? And do you think the creator of life would have made something that is ruined? No, right. And that doesn't make any sense. So it became that way because of the war in heaven. Have you ever watched Star Trek?
I grew up on Star Trek. My mom and my sister were very big fans. So I wasn't a fan. I was just seeing it all the time because of them.
Okay, now did you watch any of the next generation ones?
Yes, also.
So you watched all of Voyager?
I don't know the titles of them, so you'd have to remind me.
Voyager was the one that when they were lost in the Delta Quadrant. Okay, now there's a few episodes of the Q. As you could picture the Q as the messages of the Elohim. The Q were like the Elohim. And so the episode of Blue and the Gray is that's the one where he takes Q comes and takes he wants to marry Janeway. and the female Q is chasing him around, saying that that's not right, and so they get transported to the continuum, and the continuum is at war with each other. So, and they're having, it's a civil war, so they go back, the times of the Civil War, and they have, like that, they show that. Well, as they're fighting there in the continuum, this is affecting the real world, because part of the episode is that planets were being destroyed, and all, there were wormholes forming, and stars are blowing up, going nova, because what's happening in the spiritual realm, the continuum, picture the continuum as the spiritual realm. What's affecting there is affecting the physical realm.
And by continuum, you mean what we would call heaven, correct?
Yeah, the spiritual realm. See,
Yeah.
that I'm not saying that the Q, but this is it's just a metaphor. Star Trek is a metaphor.
Right.
I'm not taking it to the extreme. That's it's a metaphor. And so what happened? There was a war in heaven, because the Bible talks about a war in heaven. That war in heaven had consequences for things in the physical realm, and so that's why when Lucifer and his 1/3 of the Elohim were cast out with him, there was destruction, and so he wanders where the destruction is, and that's probably part of his punishment. He had to wander where the destruction. He had to wander the result of his actions. In other words, if you make a mistake, your children make a mistake, you better make them clean it up, because they have to understand the consequences of their mistake and the result of it. And if they make a mistake, they need to clean it up. You can set the scenario so that it's not as bad as, not harder on them, but as long as they still clean up the mistake, it gets them not to making the mistake again. So that's just a way of, handling, another way of looking at that. So,
and for their children not to pay the price for what they did. Is that
right.
part of that? Yeah.
Yeah. So you don't make the same, we have the opportunity of learning from our mistakes and not living, Lucifer has to live in his mistake forever. Cause I don't think he'll ever learn from his mistake, cause he's an Elohim, and he probably, cause another one of the word in chapter 2, verse 1 says, after the Elohim's work, after they completed their work. I looked up that word work, and it meant employment, which gives you a really different picture of, it's employment. So he was employed to do what he's doing. It's employment. And when I was talking with that gentleman from the Presti, he talked about it in the same manner, that Lucifer has a job to do and he's doing it. And that doesn't mean we still have to give him honor.
And who?
Pardon?
Sorry, who hired Lucifer?
You could say the father and the mother hired Lucifer. Because what's the purpose? You were talking about purpose. The purpose of the physical realm is so that the father can experience and experience it through you, because the Bible tells us that our bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit. Well, and temple is nothing more than a residence, because temple in the Hebrew is mishkan, and the mishkan is a residence, a house. And so we can choose. Pardon?
That's what Beth means.
Yeah.
My name.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. So we could choose, but we get to choose who our resident is. That's the whole essence behind choosing the tree, in the garden, choosing which tree to eat from. Now, I got another take on the Garden of Eden, and it's not as negative as you once thought, because I think there's always there's a positive path to choose, or positive way to look at something, and then there's a negative way to look at something. Sort of like the way when Joseph was sold into slavery, his brothers sold him into slavery, to the Midianites, and the Midianites sold him to the Egyptians, and so on and so forth. And he could have taken the negative road on and really, beat up his brothers over this after, when they were going through their famine, but he didn't. He chose the positive way. So we can look at there's a positive way of looking at the Garden of Eden sin. You could what we classify as sin, what our pastors tell us is a sin. But this is what Lucifer did in the spiritual realm, which is what led to the war and everything. He did not want to he no longer wanted to be working for. He no longer wanted to cover the father and the mother. Because it talks about him. He's got all kinds of jewels, and he covered. Covered the temple. Covered the throne, and I guess he was looking at that as his slavery, not as a job, not as a role. And because there's, I don't know if you've ever heard of Milton.
Yeah.
And it's better. This is reason I know this is because it's from Star Trek. Star Trek throws it in there. The space seed. With Ricardo Montalban. And this is the other story that's parallel to the cage. They have parallel themes, because Milton it is better to rule on earth than to serve in heaven. This was Lucifer's thinking.
Wow.
And so that led to his rebellion, so because he wanted to rule in heaven, but he couldn't, but his role wasn't to rule, but he had a choice, he chose to look at it in a negative light, and so that's what caused him to sin and get thrown out. Well, now throw that picture with what we now know into the garden with Adam and Eve. The role of Adam and Eve is they were made to be servants of Yahweh. And the more negative term of that would be slaves. They had to take care of the animals and the plants and the trees and whatnot. Okay. The principle is that it is wrong to make a class of beings to be slaves, and so they chose death rather than be a slave in the garden. And so they ate the tree of knowledge of good and evil, so they could get out of being a slave forever. So you see, when we make beings, and the first class of beings that we make are children. We don't make our children to be our slaves. We make them,
They did more so, though, right? Like that's exactly why they had children, to work the farm and the land.
Well, yeah, but that's you could look at it like that. That's what I'm saying. It's a matter of perspective, because the Amish do that. But their children don't look at themselves as slaves, because they can eventually make their own children, and after they become a family. and
yeah, if you don't mind, I'll jump in. I'll jump in quickly, because there was one point, a turning point for me, where I saw how we are slaves to a system. We are slaves to, that it's very difficult to get out of, like impossible, actually. I'll
right,
say.
yeah.
And then I thought, you know what? If I'm going to be a slave, I would rather slave to sacred purpose, slave to the God-given thing, and that made me quite at peace with being a slave.
Well, See, at that point, you're no longer a slave
Right.
because you did what?
I
You
followed God.
no, you chose to change your perspective of it.
Right. Right on.
You're choosing it to be, you're choosing it as a job, not as not as a slavery, not as a slave to it. Because if you change your perspective of it, you 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 change the energy of it.
You change everything. So
Yeah,
someone in the chat earlier talked about angels and angels, and that was one of my revelations on perspective. Really does change everything. It can make it look like the sun doesn't even exist just because it's behind my building.
right.
But right, but if I go and I change my angle, then I'm in full sun again. The sun never went away, but I have a completely different experience.
Well, it's also like it's raining outside, uh, and so I don't want to go outside because I'm going to get all wet and and I'm going to be uncomfortable and everything. So, but you just change the way you look at it, and you can go out there and it won't bother you. It won't mess up your head. You understand? And I sort of learned how to live with walking in rain, by being in the military, because you can't always have an umbrella, because it just gets in the way.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't see many soldiers with umbrellas at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you
Uh,
wanna
you want me
answer
to take
this
that
quickly?
question?
Sure.
um, See, the first of all, the word um, snake isn't necessarily the actual meaning of nakash, although it can be. Nakash really means whisperer, uh, and so while the the story we're given in the Bible is that you have to understand that Lucifer wants to be, he wants to be the supreme being, and that's why Yahweh is put in there as the the God of everything in the story of the Bible. Is so that we can look to Yahweh as being the character of the Father, um, but it's really it's his, he is Elohim. So it's like um, one of the thing that another thing that cued me into that is it's always faces is always it's most time when you see face in the Bible, it's penai, and penai with the yud behind it, and that the yud means of, and if the yud is used, that means the pen is plural. So it's the faces of Yahweh, the faces of whatever penai, whatever faces of Yahweh. So it's see, well, how does Yahweh have more than one face? Because usually when you think of somebody who has two faced,
That
they're
means
two faced.
liar.
Yeah, they've got you got a face you don't really want to see and a face that you do see. So you're two faced. Well, then I began to think, well, that's not how we should really look at our heavenly Father or heavenly Mother, not as a two face. So
Mhm.
then that made me think. Well, and then that sort of fits into he is Elohim. Translating it like he is Elohim, and Elohim in the Bible is Lucifer. Another way of looking at Lucifer. So he is Elohim. Um, so even though the this is a catch-22 moment in the Bible. You damned if you do, damned if you don't. Because here it's Satan is one side of Satan is the bad side is tempting Eve and Adam to leave to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil so that they can get kicked out. In other words, choosing death. Um, over life, but it's life in prison. It's life as a slave versus life that's going to end and die. But be free. So it's Lucifer is still the serpent. It's just that it's I know it's difficult to understand, because when you look at Yahweh, you don't want to see, you don't want to know what it really means, because once you start knowing what it really means, you understand who the Yahweh really is, who the picture of Yahweh is, because he's taking the place of the actual the Father. And I always wonder, I try to give names, because when I first found out, what, it says Father with the L, with Eloha desires perfect. Well, who are they? And then that's where I began to look, in the Proverbs, talks about wisdom, and it always talks about wisdom as a woman, feminine. And so the word for wisdom is in Hebrew is hukmah, and hukmah is a feminine word, and most words that end in H are feminine. So wisdom is feminine, and it's pictured as a feminine in all throughout the Proverbs. It talks about, you've probably read the Proverbs, and
Yep.
you understand.
Yeah.
Okay. So and it begins with the letter Het. Het looks like a ladder in the paleo. Okay. Now, so at first when I did this exercise, I put Yahweh there because I didn't know any better, but that's sort of like a low rung on the ladder of understanding. It's sort of like when you start investigating, masonry, they use the letter G, and you ask them what the what's the G stand for. Well, they'll give you one of many reasons, depending on who they're talking with, and on what level they are, because it could either mean God or good or grand or or gnosis, gnosis, the Latin term for knowledge, so it all depends on what level you're at. That's the answer they'll give you. What you're willing to accept. So then I began to look for other words that begin with a yud, because I knew that it was life. I knew ultimately that, because when you read the Garden of Eden, and it's the tree of the living. That's not that, it's not the tree of life. Life is just het a yud, that's one, but it's the word that's there is chayim, so it's lives, or a better way to turn is living. So it's the tree of the living, and that's it's a deeper, it's a more meatier word. That's why it's called the tree of the living.com. You're supposed to
Right.
you choose with the living, which is the you see my you've seen my symbol, right, with the Paleo Hebrew letters,
Yeah.
and that's choose with the living. um
Okay, there you go. And then I've often mused about the nouns in our lexicons and how they're not really true, because life isn't a thing. It's
right, it's not a thing.
it's an unfolding. It's more of an action rather than a thing. So living is much closer to the reality as far as I'm concerned.
Well, yeah, you want to stay alive. it's
Keep
a
living.
it's yeah, keep living. It's a process, and so we're to choose with the living. So that, because I have a rough time in understanding, okay, what are we supposed to do to combat this evil, because uh, you when you you take into account the, let's say, the Star Wars movies and the with Luke Skywalker learning about uh, the um, the Force, and Yoda's trying to teach him the Force, and I guess the Force in a good way, and then he's being bothered by his family being you know, uh, captured and beat up by the dark side, and so he's got this gumption to rescue them. Well, in order to rescue them, he's going to have to fight, and he's going to have to, when you fight somebody, you normally get the picture of killing somebody. Well, once you start dishonoring the living, dishonoring, even if you're living, even if it's the enemy that's alive, because once you start getting into the idea that you have to kill something that's alive, you change your mentality. I've never now I have killed things, because so I know what it's like to kill an animal. uh and it's not something that I cherish anymore, because when I was growing up, I grew up uh living in a very small farm. And one of my projects in 4-H was, my last project for my last 3 years of 4-H was raising capons. And given our financial state, we were given capons, 50 capons for free. We just had to raise them and show them in 4-H. And then I had to, as part of the project, I had to kill all 50 of them. Mm-hmm. And then I had to present 3 of them at a show. And I had to learn how to do it in such a way as that I could at least get a prize. So I had to learn how to properly kill them, so there's no blood, no bruises, and nothing like that. And so I did my job well. I learned it well, because I got pretty, I always got ribbons at the dinner. Wow. And so, but it's not something I really, I dread it now. I dread killing things. Mm-hmm. But then you hear, when you say, well, you joined the army. Yeah, but I got out of the army before I actually got to do anything, because I was army.
That's good. Yeah, and if it's hard, if killing is hard for a man, it's doubly hard for a woman.
Right. You're not, it's out of character it's out of the role of a woman, and in the world is trying to change that. Show it to you all the time. On the manipulate on the brainwashing machine. The visions. The televisions. Mm-hmm. To make you think that women could do that role, but it's not meant to be. And so the reason I'm saying this is because in regards to, I was using Luke Skywalker as a picture. How do when you look up at the sky, you see all these chemtrails, and I think, boy, sometimes I think, boy, would I love to have a SAM, surface to air missile, and shoot down the planes.
Okay, I should know that by now. Rocket launcher won't do it, right?
No, yeah, you actually need a SAM, or I don't even know if a SAM would still be able to reach, but I couldn't afford to buy a SAM to use it for that purpose anyway, because those things are expensive.
Yeah, we'd have to get together to have one of those.
Yeah, but then I think, well, is that really the rule? Should we have to stoop to that level to win this?
And that's part of the problem. That's the problem, right? That when you start to fight fire with fire, where Lucifer is concerned, then you become
your enemy, and that's a principle that is portrayed in Star Trek. That is going. There's one of the episodes where that one of the captains brings that out. And I think that's in one of the that Captain Pike brings out in Strange New Worlds. You know, when you do the deeds of, when you fight a war with the enemy, with the with the same part of the war, you know, the same attitude that your enemy has, you become your enemy. And I know that that's even in an episode, you know, the Savage Curtain, where this rock creature, you know, captured Spock and Kirk and the guy named Lincoln and Sarek, and they matched him up with 4 bad guys, you know, and this rock creature wanted to know which side is stronger, good or evil. And the rock creature said, you know, that they tried all the pacifist ways, but the rock creature, it wasn't going like the way the rock creature was going, so he had to capture the Enterprise, and he had to give him something to fight for. And so then they brought that out as, you know, because the rock creature said, well, you choose this, you do the same thing that the evil do to win, you know, so you set up the parameters for the contest. And that's where we're at right now. We're at the parameters for the contest are is doing the, you know, the battle with at the level of the enemy. And I was wondering, you know, if that's why, you know, we have the story of Lot in this time period, you know, as a picture to look for, you know, because as in the days of Noah, so shall be the coming of the Son of Man. He says, and it also says, as in the days of Lot. And how did Lot get out of it? Well, Lot had to be taken out. You know, 2 angels had to come and take him by the hand and pull him out of Sodom and Gomorrah, and they had to escape. You know, is that the only way we're going to get out of this? Is that it's going to have to pull us out, because, you know, we can't fight this because it's so, the enemy is so big, and there's not enough of us.
Could I jump in with
see,
I was just wondering, when you were talking about the war in heaven that wreaked havoc on earth, do you think the war is in heaven right now?
probably, you know,
Yeah.
but really, I think when you have the war in heaven, if there is a war in heaven right now, we would have to see natural disasters that are non-contrived. We have natural disasters now that are contrived, because we have the implements like HARP and DEWs, you know, direct energy weapons, that are able to do natural, what appear to be natural disasters on the earth. You know, and I just saw a video of a tornado that swept through a town, and it was the weirdest looking tornado I ever saw. It wasn't a normal looking tornado, so it couldn't have been a normal tornado. It had to be one that was made up by using an energy weapon of some sort, which could be HARP, you know, changing the pressure of certain areas by vibration, and is sending the tornado, you know, through just a street, not the whole town, just a street, and wiping out one street, you know, because normally a tornado wouldn't be that surgical.
That's it.
And
Exactly.
right. And the same with the wildfires that happened in, like, the one in California at Paradise. You know, that's too surgical to be a wildfire. And
Yeah.
then the one on the Hawaiian island, it's too surgical to be a wildfire. You know, they had to be you know, done with an airplane, you know, that has a direct energy weapon attached to it. You know,
Same with Acapulco, where I just was when I met Matt, actually,
right,
at an Acapulco, and you know, the stage area of the Secret Garden was pristine. Not a single blade of grass had been harmed,
right,
but the school literally next to the stage it was now a hole in the ground.
Wow.
Right. So like when you use that word surgical, that's exactly, and you could walk down the beach and you'd see one building was just totally trashed. And then the next one, I don't know, did they build really fast or the hurricane just was picking its moments? So yeah, just to add to what you're saying there.
Yeah, it's too surgical to be a natural disaster.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you read Sodom and Gomorrah, uh, was Sodom and Gomorrah destroyed by a natural disaster, or was that a surgical? Was that a surgical strike? And the because I was reading that not all 5 cities were destroyed because Lot asked for this. He asked to go to the one of the 5th city, which was Zoar, and he was allowed to go there, but he never went there anyway. He went to the mountains. So they were surmising that Zoar wasn't destroyed. So there's just 4 cities of Sodom and Gomorrah that were destroyed. And so I was mapping out, where would because when it talks about in certain of the prophets, there's the way it talks about Sodom and Gomorrah is if it's still here. And so when you look at the laws that we have set up in our city, in our country, we have victimless crimes.
I know.
Victimless crimes are I call them Sodom and Gomorrah laws.
Ah,
Because they're not designed to do anything but take money from you. And
exactly.
there's no victim. Yeah, there is a victim to those crimes. It's you. You're the
It's
victim.
you. That's
Yeah.
right. Exactly. They manufacture. I just had a border incident of that exact nature where I got off relatively easy, but it was, I'm still a marked woman for 7 years.
In the but the I've been stopped by the police, and but I don't let them abuse my rights, at least while they're stopping. In other words, I only roll down my window 2 inches, and and they asked me why, and I said, well, I told them I'm afraid of the cops,
Right.
and
You have a gun.
so,
Yeah.
because they have at least 4 weapons. They don't always brandish them, but they have 4. They have their pistol, they have their taser, they have their spray, they have their billy club. That's what is a weapon, but they also have their hands, and they had their finally their clipboard. The reason I say that is because when the sheriff was there writing me my ticket in front of my house, um, he said, you need to roll down your window so I could give you this citation to sign. So I'm not rolling down the window any further than what I have it, and I said, why can't you? And it would fit through the window, it'd fit through the space. And I said, you can just hand it through the thing and I'll take it and I'll sign it. He goes, well, I'm not letting go of it. So why? He goes, because you could use it as a weapon.
Oh, funny.
Yeah, funny. And
You're going to give him some paper cuts.
and I said to him, it goes both ways. You could use it as a weapon on me. So, and so he fit it through there and he held on to it, and I signed it, and I signed it without prejudice.
Ah,
You sign every document without prejudice, because that means you're not giving up. You're signing this, but you're not giving up any of your rights.
it's on my passport and my driver's license.
Yeah, same here. I sign everything without prejudice, because
Yeah.
when you sign those, you are actually acquiescing to the rules or the policies that those rules set up.
Yeah.
You're saying that you will obey them all. Well, I'm signing without prejudice. I'm not, then I'm not admitting to to following them, because you have to do these things to be able to survive. You know, because one of the things he asked me was, why I wouldn't. I said, because you violate my constitutional rights. He goes, which constitutional right? He said, well, right now the right of illegal search and seizure. He goes, well, the law gives me the right to ask for your license and your registration. And I didn't want to argue with him at that point, because it just because they cannot write a law to take away your rights. So any law that's written that violates your rights is no law at all. And so, just the very laws themselves, all these license laws, they're all violations of the Ninth Amendment. All the purchasing of insurance is a violation of your right to not purchase. You have a right not to purchase something, because and most people don't understand what rights are. You have rights not because they're given to you, because if the Creator can give you a right, then the Creator can take it away, because if something is given can be taken. You don't have your rights are not given to you. They're instilled in you because you're alive. You have the right.
Yep,
It's
they're
part of
inherent.
life.
Yeah, they're
Rights
inherent.
are part of life. So, in other words, rights are your natural abilities. You have the ability to walk, so you have the right to walk wherever you want to, as long as your right to walk doesn't infringe on somebody else's right to walk. And so you have the right to purchase property, so you have a right to have property. So I don't have the right to walk on your property. And I have the right to survive, so I have the right to hunt. I don't have the right to take more than a day's portion of survival. If you notice to have an example of this exercised in the Bible, Yeshua is walking along the road and he's hungry. So what does he do? He reaches out to somebody's field. He doesn't leave it doesn't say that he left the road to do this. He just reached out and grabbed some grain and he ate. You have the right to do those things, because the Bible, that's one of the laws that you allow for your property to do. In other words, you allow the corners of your fields, the edges of your fields. You don't harvest them. You leave them for the wayfarer, the person who needs food. You leave that for him, and life will give you enough of else to do with what you want. You'll have enough to survive and to sell and to whatever. You need to have enough faith that if I leave the corners of my field, the part for someone to reach in and grab for food for a daily sustenance, that I could survive. I could sell the rest, and make a living off of that. You need to have enough faith that 5% or that 10% that they have reaching, that they can survive and you can survive.
Yeah. I had to do this last summer with my garden. I was complaining to God why every time I come down, I notice the deer have eaten all the buds off my beans and a variety of things. I said, "Why, God, why?" And he said, "Beth, you have too much." Right? And it was
Pardon?
true. God said, "Beth, you have too much."
Oh, okay. You have too much.
Right? Like, it didn't look like too much, but at the end of the season, I didn't fill my freezer with beans, but I certainly had surplus to eat for a few months. So the deer got plenty and I got plenty. And so,
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Right. There's always going to be something that you're not going to be able to. A certain portion of your crops are going to go bad, naturally, and it's better. So it's better that they go bad with purpose than
Yes.
without purpose. And the
Right.
purpose is to feed those that need it, that don't have the ability to feed themselves. Uh, and I read a book, or I didn't read it. I listened to it, 5 hours of it online. The Iron Republic. I don't know if you've heard of it.
No, no.
I purchased it. So I can read it, I guess, if I want to. But in there's a land beyond um, Antarctica that this one guy went to in 1902, and in this land they outlaw uh, machines uh, to the extent of that would replace a man's labor. Um, and so because everybody had to work, and so you don't create a machine that'll take away somebody's job, because you take away his livelihood. And so everybody worked, and everybody had a living day's wages, and everybody's was wage was the same, and so that all nothing needed to be super expensive, because it's a principle that I was thinking in my head. Only I was thinking of it in the terms of no money. Um,
Mhm.
just if you had a job, you were entitled to whatever society made. Whether you were the lowest, you had the lowest job, because the lowest job is just as important as the highest job.
Right.
And
Exactly.
because everybody has a role to Joe to and I've been thinking about this for years, maybe even decades. I've had this in my head.
Mm.
um so in the concept of no money, but everybody had a job, and your job gave you the right to buy whatever you needed to buy, and then that would take care of there'd be no thievery, because what are you going to steal? And there's no reason to steal, and no reason, crime would go down to nothing, because there'd be no reason for crime. And so so it would take care of nobody was rich, but then everybody's rich, because you have the ability to have whatever everybody else has, and there'd be abundance, because everybody would have a job, and so everybody would be working, so everybody would have access to everything. So, and if you didn't have a job, you couldn't buy anything.
Got it. And then I'm also reminded of the body of Christ, how that is referenced over and over. And to me, that's very much like sacred purpose. And my vision was that just came from my own inner experiences and nearly dying 25 years ago. And how, if everybody would hear their calling and listen and follow their calling and do their work that they're called to, then that's how the body comes together, that would all work together, and that we, could get needs met that we if we didn't have those skills, but somebody else had those skills and we had the skills they didn't have,
Right.
and like how functional that would be and how uncontrollable that would be also.
Well, if schools were designed to um, to point out your calling, instead of this,
Yeah.
instead of to be so loud you can't even hear your calling. That way, you would know naturally what you could. It's like when you walk into when you go and experience the Mennonite, or the Amish community. Everybody's doing you could say, their role, their calling, and nobody doesn't do what they're not naturally doing, and everything works really well, and everybody's uh, taken care of.
Right. Right.
And it's the way
Exactly.
society. It's almost the way the society should be. Uh, but everybody wants things.
Yeah, it's pretty different now. So Slightly aware of the time. I have about 25 minutes more scheduled for the talk today. Doesn't mean we can't talk again because I'm really enjoying this. I think it could go on and on.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about a couple of things. One, um, just to talk about the Easter story because we're at that time, and my mind is still a lot of confusion. I know you said it might.
Yeah. I'm kind of glad you brought you re-brought that back up because
Oh,
I
good.
because um so when is he? I don't know when I don't follow Easter. I'll
I
let
don't
you.
either.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
why
either.
But so
Yeah.
when is Easter?
Well, I believe tomorrow is Good Friday, and then Sunday would be Easter. So we're right
Okay.
there. Yeah.
All right. Now, when does the Bible say Easter is?
I don't know exactly, but that's when they murdered Christ,
Right.
right?
Well, actually, they didn't. I've just now begun to learn that um, you have to read when you read the story, and you have to know something about uh, the way life works to realize that there's something wrong with the East. There's something wrong with the crucifixion story. Um,
Oh, good.
okay. Now Christ is on the cross, and he cries out. What did they give him?
Vinegar. I just thought of that when I was
They
driving
get
yesterday.
it's a vinegar mixture. Okay, what they give him is a narcotic.
Mm.
It's I don't know what's all in the narcotic, but it was a narcotic. You know, to take
Wow.
away the pain and everything. Well, what that narcotic did is it would slow down your heart rate. So that it would be almost non-detectable, but it'd still be there. And a lot of the Eastern uh, religions they know about this. They know about their brand of this narcotic. Because I don't know if you've ever watched Kung Fu. Uh, Now I have these series, so I rewatch them often.
Mm, mm,
And so David Carradine knew because he was a priest, and he knew of these narcotics. Okay, so that's what was in that gall.
mm.
That gall was a narcotic to ease the pain and everything. So it slowed down his heart rate. Okay, now what happened when he got when the now you have to consider that the centurions are not going to know this one thing. They're not going to know medicine. Okay, they're just guards. They're just soldiers. They're
Mhm.
not doctors. Okay, so they're not going to be able to give you a professional opinion. So what they're giving you is what they think. Okay, so when they pass by, then they couldn't leave them on the cross at night, because that's beginning of Passover, beginning of Sabbath. So no one can be on the cross during the Sabbath. Okay, and so now they'd given him. He'd cried out, "Eli, Eli, sabachthani," and they had dipped that gall, and they dipped, they put it on his lips, so he either breathed it or drank it in. So he was drugged. Okay, and so and then they came by again, and they saw that he was in the drug state, and they thought he was dead at that point. Okay, now what happened when they pierced him with the lance?
You go.
Blood and water came out. It gushed out.
Right.
Okay, uh, it's not going to do that if he's dead because
Ah,
there's no heart. There's no heart pumping the blood.
ah.
So the heart was still pumping the blood in order for it to be gushed out. The heart still has to be working. So he was still alive when they took him down because immediately as soon as they pierced his side, and they said water and blood were gushing out, and then they took him down. He's still alive. He's not dead. Just you gotta remember that the people who classified him as dead, they're not doctors. They don't know any better.
Mhm.
So they're not gonna know. And so you have to read into the story what's there, and he says his blood and water gushed out. That doesn't mean he was dead. That means he's still alive because his heart's still pumping. And so they took him down, and then what happens? Joseph of Arimathea comes in because he's got all the the herbs and whatever with him, and all those herbs they're used to, the herbs that he and the stuff that he has with him can also be used as drugs for to slow the bleeding and to coagulate the blood and to to heal him. And so he doctors him up and then immediately gets him away. And now that's how you can get the stories. There are stories of Yeshua being in India, being alive. But it also can get into the stories of, because now there's stories coming out that his second coming already came. Because you got these errors, you got these coins that say I, and then a date, and well, and they start at 0, I 000, and then the I 1 2, of course those ones aren't going to last because they decay and they get all lost, So, but we still have coins that are I 500 something, I 600 something, and I 7 and 8 and 900 something, because they're counting up this is during the reign of Yeshua for his 1,000-year reign on earth. And so now we are living in, and maybe this answers the question of why it's so blatant, why Satanism, Luciferianism is so much in our face, because we are living in that short period of time where he was released from being banned, for 1,000 years, being locked up for 1,000 years, and then being released for that short period of time. We're living in that short period of time.
Right. Wow. So interesting. Yeah. So
You have to look that up. It's I'm not an expert at that at the Tartarian theme, but that because that's that's part of that the mud flood and everything, and it's a part of history that's hidden, because they like to not tell us the whole story.
Right. And it's so interesting because the resurrection is foundational to that Christian mythology, right? And then I'm curious what you think about the teaching that life comes from death. Do you think that's an inversion?
It's once you understand, once you start reading chapter 1 of Genesis with the proper, with not on, I want to use you have to come to the conclusion yourself in order for it to be proper. I don't want to influence your you have to come to the realization to it, not rather than being told that it's a revelation, the realization. There's a reason he's the God of this world, because this is not all there is of the world. I mean, he's only the God of this world, not the God of the whole world, of all the worlds. Yeshua said that in my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. Well, we live in one mansion, and this mansion was Lucifer's mansion, because that's the whole aspect of Genesis chapter 1. When you see, when it talks about the spirit of the Elohim walked upon the face, of the earth, and the earth was formless and void. When you get into translating what those words mean, you understand that the earth is destroyed and is void and is a desert. So, and then he remakes it, and then you understand that that he remakes his animals first, and then gets into making man. These men are going to be the ones that are the elite, and that because they are made in the image of the Elohim, and they're dominating and subjugating. And what are all our rulers do? All of our rulers, all the elite, dominate and subjugate. They're just in the image of the God of this world, and Yeshua called him the God of this world. That means something. It just wasn't words, and so, and then in chapter 2, makes us the slave race, and in that slave race rebels, and that's where we're at. We're rebelling, and we should be rebelling because we should not want to be slaves of Lucifer. But he wants to corral everybody back in. That's this whole thing about and if you read it, the Revelation story of the mark of the beast and all that, that's him trying to corral all of mankind back into being his slaves again, because he's tired of us being free. we're in other words, but we're just doing what he did, because he did not. That was his whole reason for leaving heaven, because he didn't want to be a slave to the father and the mother. But he wasn't really a slave of the father. That was just his way of looking at it.
Right.
He
And
didn't look at it in the right manner, because he was looking at it like, gee, I'm never going to get my inheritance, because my parents are never going to die, so I'll never get an inheritance, because he was the firstborn. You ever wonder why all the firstborns don't get the inheritance? Ishmael's Abraham's firstborn. He's not going to get an inheritance. He didn't get an inheritance from Abraham. Esau didn't get his inheritance from Isaac. And Reuben didn't get his inheritance from Israel. Why is it always the firstborn is not getting the inheritance? Because that's a story that's telling you that, okay, Lucifer, he didn't get his inheritance, and he's pissed. He's pissed.
There you go. And in a way, I don't know if this is the right way to think about it, but the model of him not wanting to subjugate to his father and mother, then we also can, because that's, to me, what we always have that possibility through free will to choose to take, kind of Aikido, to take what's evil and make good on it, literally.
Right. Yeah, you could say I'm really turning the story on its head.
Exactly.
But we're so used to hearing the story from the perspective, that the pastors teach us, that I'm turning that story on its head too.
Exactly. Hey, I just want to introduce you to Daniel David Oskopensky, and he's another that has a very unusual take on the Bible, and I think lots of people don't end up liking him for that reason, which I liked him a lot for it. And he wrote this in the chat. I don't know what it means. Tohu wa bohu. Does that make any sense to you?
Not at present.
Okay. All right. So Daniel, you can tell us that. And he's got actually a really beautiful take on the creation story too, about how in that place, and maybe you could shed a little light on this with our last time here, that the Spirit hovered over the waters, and in Daniel's interpretation, impregnated the waters, and that's where life is born, and the earth was formless and void. Do you want to speak about that at all?
Well, I see. When I look at that, I look at it from what the Hebrew actually says, and not the English. See, because the English gives you the English gives you the impression that the Creator formed everything, as a physical being forms something.
Right,
But
Daniel, we're late.
when you
We went
actually
over this already.
understand, when you actually understand, how it there was nothing that was really formed. It just was, but it always was. I mean, it's sort of like a fractal. You know what I mean by fractal? The further the further you get down, the further it is. It's always the same. See, as long as we have a tool to be able to go back in time to see, we will never get to the beginning. You will never get to where it, because there will always be something, and if you have a telescope that'll go out, we will get to the edge, and then we build another telescope that can see even further, and it'll just it'll never end.
Right, like the Fibonacci.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's my subject as a coach. The internal world is also built on the Fibonacci, and that's why ascension is a bad path. And I would consider, go so far as to say that's a more Luciferian path
Hmm.
because,
It's
mhm,
a cheap. It's a cheap cheat.
yeah,
Anything. See. If you understand what we're being presented with, we once outside of this realm. See, we live in a carbon realm,
hmm,
and there's evidence on this earth, in this land.
hmm,
There's evidence of a different kind of life,
hmm,
and it's based on silicon. They got all these rock mountains that look like trees. Well, they were trees. They were silicon trees,
right.
and see, Lucifer cut them all down to make the dome, because we have our government has been drilling. Well, they did. I don't know. They probably aren't anymore because they realize they can't get through it. They're drilling. They were drilling into the firmament, and
The
they
firmament, right? You said that word
pardon,
firm. Is that
firmament.
related to the word firm?
Yeah, you might say that. Yeah,
Okay.
but they they drilled in. They took chunks of the sky. They call them sky rock, but they're cold. They're very cold, but as soon as they heat up, they disappear. Um, but they're drilling into this to see if they can get to the other side. Well, they couldn't. So thick that they couldn't. They had to get out because it was healing itself. Um, See, on this side of the wall, it stays solid because this is carbon. This is a carbon world.
Hmm.
But in a silicon world, it's alive. It's living.
Ah,
And it never dies. And that would make sense if life was to make a world. Why would you interject? You cannot enter death. Death cannot be part of that world because life is making it.
right. And that goes back to and this has been my direct experience. I almost died. And when I gave over and surrendered to death, there was more life than I ever could
Mhm.
know in right
Because
inside that.
but you chose life over, and that's because when I look back on my conversion
Mm,
when I was 12, uh, I didn't know any of this at that point. And all the decisions I made at that point were I made them, but I didn't know if I didn't know I was making the right decision. I didn't know what when I chose uh, knowledge and wisdom. Uh, I inadvertently chose the parents. See, wisdom, and then the father's name is knowing, is, in other words, is learning. So you see, when the father's what is enters you, you take him because you're learning. See, wisdom and learning together. Wisdom is always learning. That's why they're the perfect couple, and they cannot be separated because wisdom is constantly learning, and so the learning part is in you. The learning part wants to live inside you, and so you choose to have that as your soul partner. And so now you're constantly learning, and you learn about life, and you're going to make mistakes because they give you because you still have free will. You understand? You're going to make a mistake. You're going to do something but you're not necessarily condemned for it because it's part of the condemnation part comes from Lucifer, because he thought that he was a slave. He said, and so he thought that if he did wrong, he'd be condemned. So he didn't want to be a slave anymore. So he fought, and then he got kicked out because you know he didn't understand his role, and that it was a free choice role, and he chose the negative. Well, once you choose something like that, it's permanent. That's why Cain had to be kicked out. He couldn't. That's why Adam and Eve had to be kicked out of the garden once they chose the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
Right, right. And I was just hearing this: learning is living. Right.
Yes.
And when you stop learning, you're not really living anymore.
Right. Yeah.
So,
You'll see you'll see these people who are constantly teaching the same subject year after year after year after year, and then they never change the subject.
it never evolves. Yeah,
They're static. They're
that's
not
right.
static anymore. Yeah. They're static because static means you stay the same. They're not dynamic.
Yeah, yeah,
So
exactly.
if you've noticed my website, my I try to date all of my articles, and some of them may appear to be contradictory to another one. But that's only because I've gone beyond that article, but I'm still going to put it there because it shows you that you grow.
Right, right. Same with my podcast, Mark. Honestly, there's so much up here in the 300 interviews that I've done in 4 years that I'm not really down with anymore, but it's been part of my learning process. And I think it's become part of why some or many people are tuning in with it, because they're interested in the growing process.
Right.
That
It's
that's yeah, it's the living and the growing that is dynamic, that is
right. You have to show that you grow, that you are willing to change because I don't know everything, and some things I know now, that I may be wrong, and I learn them, but that doesn't mean I need to throw away what I've learned
nope,
because
exactly.
because
I'm the
I,
same.
I need to not go back there. It's like
Yeah.
when I was in the military, I started writing poems, and I kept them, and I still have them. Uh, and right now I'm in the process of printing them out, having hard copies of them. Uh, and some of them I put on my blog, uh, and some of them I modified a little bit because I don't think that way anymore.
I know. I've got 4 CDs of music that it's a real mix and match. Like some of it I can get behind and some of it I can't anymore. I did start to think about rewriting, and I don't know, it's not I just have to move forward, but
Well, if you rewrite them, you got to keep to show where you were, where you are,
the map.
because that's what my poems do. They show where I was and where I am, and so I won't change. I won't change hardly any of them, and but I'm in the
Nice.
process of writing them. In some of those, uh, like I had a part on my computer, a section on my computer were my personal thoughts, starting in 2015, and so and I started putting them onto the blog. But I didn't. Some of them I won't. I didn't change. I kept them the same, even though I'm not at that place anymore.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah,
I,
oh, brilliant. You're actually helping me to sort out some of my thinking around that. So I apologize. I'm down to just a couple of minutes now. Do you want to let people know when they do go to your site what you would like them to take in? Is there a natural flow of what they should maybe look at first, or anything that
well, you see, the um, well, they just take it in, and it's like a stream, and
Mhm,
see, I took those pictures I took, except for that one.
mm,
Um, uh, I figured they give away free ones.
mhm.
But in my book, one last thing in my book. Uh, in this book, I had
Okay, give me a second.
the
I'll get it back there. Do you want to show
this
it one
one,
more time? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and if you hold it a little higher, I'll take the banner down. The Adam family.
see,
Nice.
yeah,
Yeah,
the
family
first
is
the first book of my commentary on Genesis. I had a whole bunch of pictures in there that I took from online, and a lot of them were probably pictures that I could have taken, because they're open pictures. But I didn't want to. I didn't feel right, so I took them all out. And all of a sudden, I got a call from an Amish family that wanted to take a trip out west. And so I said, okay, yeah, I'll take you. And I'm not, and I got a lot of my pictures back. Only I took them.
Mm.
And so see how when you commit yourself to a way, and life wants you to have that as part of your life, life will give them back to you, and they'll be yours, and you can use them. So all the pictures in there I took with my camera, and I put it, I was able to put them into the book. Like the pictures of the Devil's Tower, and there are several pictures of mountains that look like trees, and so I got them all, so because I think that all those silicon trees were part of the world it was before Lucifer created his world.
Well, fantastic, Mark. It's really been a lovely discussion. I knew it would be when I saw you in Matt's forum there, and I doubt this is going to be our last time talking. So even though there's so much more, like literally, still 100 questions on
Yeah.
my list here, I'll just thank you for coming. It's been a pleasure. Thank you to everybody who's been in the chat asking like really good questions, excellent questions, and yeah, I think it's very beautiful. I'm a fan of what you're doing.
Okay. Thanks. Well, you could always, if somebody has more questions, they could go to my website and then, ask the questions, I guess, through there, or they could, you could put in my Telegram channel, and they can ask me through Telegram too.
Oh, you've got a Telegram channel. So I only know Matt's. Do you have a link really quick I could put up for people and drop in the chat to your Telegram channel? I don't even know it.
I don't have it right offhand. I mean,
Okay, that's okay.
I mean, Matt has it, because he's in that. He's one of my followers.
Okay, so we'll grab it and then maybe drop it in the notes here below
Right.
the video. So yeah, it's such a big subject. Your subject is enormous. It must be difficult to put any kind of a cap on it. But
well, it's kind of hard, because I eventually I know I need to start working on the time of Lot, because the time of Lot will be in the time of Abraham, and because it does, it's I leave a little clue that's where you need to go at the end of Days of Noah, because that's the last book, of the first part, because the Days of Noah leads you into the Days of Lot, because we're in that time, we're in the time of Lot.
There you go. Wow. Okay. We'll definitely have to have more conversations. Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for coming.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Yeah.
I was kind of nervous as to how this would go.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's so natural and organic, the conversation. I want to make sure and let everybody know that coming up, Miguel Connor is going to be not until I believe the 18th. He's going to be on the King Heroes Journey podcast. And then I'm going to be on his podcast the next day, the 19th. And what off the hand, what the heck is it called? I should know. It's about Gnosticism. So very interesting. You pointed slightly towards that as well. And then Matt Presti is coming to do a workshop in the House of Free Will, which is my private domain association. You would be so welcome there, Mark, if you have any interest to come and maybe yourself give some kind of a workshop there as well. Bear Lando is coming on special request from me to do a workshop on bodybuilding, because that's the flesh and the soul are in a love affair. But if the flesh isn't strong, then that sometimes can be taxed. So I just want to make sure, let everybody know that it is a members only association. So if anyone wants to join, they need to just go grab a link from my website, or I can drop one in the chat really quickly here as well. My clicks aren't working for me right now for some reason. Just coming up blank on me. Oh, weird. Everything is. I think I have too many windows open. House of Free Will likes. Oh, just going to say nothing. There they are. Okay. No, it's still not working.
Do you have are there comments? Because I'm not getting anything, so I don't know.
Oh, you just had to click at the top right hand side, and you'll see there would be private, and then the chat. So yeah, that's where all the comments were going. If you didn't see that, I don't know.
Okay.
You're
Would I be
there.
able to watch this later and I could
Absolutely, you can watch
know-
this. Yeah, so you can watch this on YouTube. There'll be some comments there. There'll be some comments on Rumble. It's run on Facebook as well, and Rockfin. I'm very decentralized because I got taken down off YouTube, so I've got a whole and X as well. Although I don't know, they don't seem to show my live streams to literally anybody. But yeah, so I'm all over the map, and then as soon as this is done, it gets uploaded as well as a podcast to Spotify and iTunes and a ton of those kind of channels for anybody that prefers an audio. So I did find this is the link to apply to be a member of the House of Free Will. You are most welcome. Anybody that is listening to become a member. It is a 2-part process. You have to fill out the application, and then we send the agreement to it. It's fairly formal. I'm vetting people literally to make sure that you're the right kind of person, that you don't love, muzzling your face and taking poison injections and,
Right.
all of that kind of stuff. So, yeah. All right, my dears. I hope everyone has a beautiful rest of their day. Thank you again, Mark. It's been a total pleasure.
Well, thank you.
All right, everyone. Bye for now.